All right, Jennifer Rosenzweig, for those of you who are unfamiliar, she is giving the double thumbs up. She's my boss. She's our program director. I just do whatever she tells me to do. And she says, you have to teach. I go, fine. As long as I can just talk about whatever I want. Which is how we end up getting classes like astrology and sex work. But not at the same time. I don't think that would work. So Jennifer, whenever you give me the cool. All right. Hi, everybody. Nice to see everyone here. I know we have a lot of people who are here, who are coming, and a lot of people who are really excited for the recording because apparently there's a bunch of stuff going on tonight, at least here in Houston. So it is good to see everybody here. And yeah, let's do some astrology. If you're unfamiliar with my usual kind of way I do this, it's usually there's going to be a, oh boy, PowerPoint kind of a thing, slides, and we'll just chat. And if people want to read, then that's cool. And if not, you have to listen to my very Fran Drescher-like voice. So that's on you. Without further ado, let's get you onto my computer. And oh no, you're gonna see all this stuff. Present. Oh no, don't look. Okay. I hope you couldn't read that fast. So, I don't know about you, but when I grew up and I went to Hebrew school, like a good Jewish kid in quasi-rural Maryland and then suburban Virginia, as we discussed, I was told that Jews don't believe in astrology. Jews don't do astrology. And the reasons I was given for this role is kind of varied, either because it's worshiping the stars, and we don't do that, because it's believing that there's a rival to God's power, and we don't do that, or because it's dumb and it doesn't work, and we don't waste our time with things that don't work. That's just what I had always been taught, even though every week, I don't know, I would, because we got a newspaper, an old-fashioned paper newspaper where I grew up, and I would always look at my horoscope. I'm a Taurus, shocking. And I would always want to see what it said. And also, I know a lot of people are really into astrology right now, especially like kids, like Gen Z kids, millennials too, are like really into astrology a lot. And the idea that someone would think like, oh, astrology isn't Jewish, so like I'd rather believe in this, even if it means I don't believe in that, the Jewish thing. And then it's just so funny because like there's a lot of stuff there in terms of Judaism and astrology, and I want to share it with you. So stuff you never learned in Hebrew school. Listen, I never learned, and we should retell stuff I never learned in Hebrew school. Your mileage may vary. Judaism and astrology. So first of all, as I always do, I try to go things in kind of chronological order and in text order. So the most basic text we have in Judaism is the Torah. And what does the Torah have to say? It says something. And if you've taken any of my other classes on witchcraft or demons or dream interpretation or anything like that, these texts should be very familiar to you. You've seen them a lot. The thing is here, it's not so clear how much they really apply. So what does the Torah have to say about astrology? Well, in Leviticus, we get a little, you shall not practice divination or soothsaying. Is that astrology? I'm seeing something like, Could it be astrology? Kind of. If you're using the stars to figure out what's going to happen next, it's sort of divination. I can get it. But it doesn't say astrology. Deuteronomy, a little bit later on, gets a little bit more specific, saying, let no one be found among you who consigns their son or daughter to the fire, or who is an augur, a soothsayer, a diviner, I'm not sure, a sorcerer, or one who casts spells, or one who consults ghosts or familiar spirits, or one who inquires of the dead. For anyone who does such things is abhorrent to God. It is because of these abhorrent things that God is dispossessing them before you. So here we get a long list of things that you're not allowed to do. And if you do, God's going to be mad. And what are the kinds of things we see on that list? You can unmute yourselves. I'm not a teacher, so I'm not going to go and just unmute people. You have to unmute yourselves. Sorry. What are the things there clearly you're not allowed to do?
Oh, consulting ghosts and familiar.
Yes. So that's specific. You cannot try to consult the dead. You can't try to talk to the dead. Good. I mean, we have all that out. Actually, that. Let's not a lot to do. Looking at this list. One more specifically, is astrology on that list?
Something happened with the sound.
I was just gonna say that too. You sound like a ghost.
Somebody's dinner. Are we, no, bad? Cannot hear? Here, cannot hear? Okay.
Now we can hear you.
Okay, I'm just sitting in my office. I'm at the show.
It's the subject matter. Watch out.
Oh, finally, God's on to me.
Gotcha.
God's like, don't tell him about the astrology. Well, there's actually supposed to be a big thunderstorm here later, so there could be lightning. We get struck down. Anyway, does Deuteronomy say that this stuff doesn't work? Does it say you shouldn't do it because it's not real? Does it say you cannot do these things because they're not, it says you can't do them. It says God doesn't like it if you do them. It doesn't say they're not real. It doesn't say they don't work. And also astrology is not on that list. Hold these things in your head as we move forward from the Torah into the prophets. Because they say other things, if my slides would like to change. The prophets say something else. Who would like to read good old Amos? Anyone? I sound like Fran Drescher. I know I do. I have recordings of myself.
I'll read.
Thank you.
Who made the Pleiades, whatever, and Orion? Who turns deep darkness into dawn and darkens day into night? Who summons the waters of the sea and pours them out upon the earth? Their name is God.
So I put the years in here approximately of when this particular prophet was writing, just so you can keep in mind and then how things progress. So we're talking the mid 700s BCE. And we have Amos, and Amos mentions specifically the Pleiades and Orion. And it's not, oh, there's stars and that's amazing and we should ignore them. It's there's stars and they're amazing and God made them. So you're seeing this tying together of there's God, like our God, like the God and God's power and the stars. And it's not negative. It's saying God has ownership over stars. Not saying anything about astrology, but it does mention stars. Again, this is going to be an evolution. 700s-ish, because Isaiah was probably two different people named Isaiah. And this is approximately what he/they wrote. He takes a slightly different tack. Anyone want to be Isaiah for a moment? It's pretty awesome to read. He's pretty angry, as he always is, because he's just Isaiah.
No other volunteers? I'll do it.
Thank you.
You are helpless despite all your art. Let them stand up and help you now, the scanners of heaven, the stargazers, who announce month by month whatever will come upon you. See, they are become like straw. Fire consumes them. They cannot save themselves from the power of the flame. This is no coal for warming oneself, no fire to sit by.
So Amos takes a slightly different tack. What's his approach? Does he see, here we're seeing astrology being called out kind of by name, stargazers, the scanners of heaven. So Isaiah looks around himself and he sees that there are people who are looking at the stars and saying, oh, what do the stars portend? What do they mean? And he is not positive about it. He's very negative about it. He thinks it's ridiculous. If you read him, he thinks it's just that he's like, this is dumb, like you're a dumb person. And it's empty and it's hollow and it means nothing. So that's Isaiah being Isaiah. Hold on to that as we move forward. More prophets. We have Job, who is, who knows, sometime between 600 and 300. We don't know, but runs the gamut. What are you going to do? I have something in way, so I can't read this. There we go. Job says, can you tie cords to the Pleiades or undo the reins of Orion? Can you lead out Mazarot, which is probably a constellation, in its season, conduct the bear with her sons? Do you know the laws of heaven or impose its authority on earth. Job was going on a bit of a rant saying about how great God is. Like, can you people, they're pestering him, can you do this stuff? Can you type? And he's just invoking like astrological symbol after astrological symbol after astrological symbol. Boom, boom, with the Pleiades, Orion, Mazarot, which we don't have anymore, but we think it was a constellation. The bear, clearly that's the Ursa Major, and her sons. Like, do you know the laws of heavens are opposed to its authority on earth? So clearly we're seeing the tying together of the stars and God in a positive way, in a way to say like, hey, you people, like you don't control, but see, it's God, the way Job's putting it. God controls the stars. God, there's constellations and they are powerful, and God is controlling them. Hold on to that as we go forward, because you have Jeremiah. Being Jeremiah, thus said God, do not learn to go the way of the non-Jewish nations, and do not be dismayed by portents in the sky. Let the non-Jewish nations be dismayed by them. Oh, Jeremiah. So here you see, who is it, Jeremiah says, who's really into the stars and what they tell us? Who's really into astrology, according to Jeremiah?
The other nations, the non-Jewish people.
Yes.
And it's very important that God does not want us to be like them. He wants to separate, or she wants to separate us.
Yes, it's such a huge theme in the Torah constantly. How can Jews not be like non-Jews? We have to be different. We have to be different to separate. Separate. I have to fidget with something. Hold on, I have a good fidget. There's my good fidget. Thanks, Jennifer. We have to separate Jews from non-Jews. And you see, of course, the prophets are going to pick up on that 100%. And you see Jeremiah just really saying that it's the non-Jews who get stressed out about the stars and astrology, and the moon is here and Saturn's there and yada, yada. And again, he's not saying it's fake. He's not saying it's not real. He's not saying it can't affect you. He's saying you don't have to worry about it, Jews, which is really interesting to me. Then we've got kings. A little bit later than Jeremiah, kings, we're talking about lots of kings. Most of our kings were terrible. God didn't even want us to have kings, frankly, because, well, they're mostly terrible. But every once in a while, there's a good one, and we like it, Josiah. King Josiah suppressed the idolatrous priests whom the kings of Judah appointed to make offerings at the shrines in the towns of Judah and around Jerusalem, and those who made offerings to Baal, to the sun and moon and constellations, all the hosts of heaven. So we are saying, oh, Josiah, he was so great as a king because he was destroying all the shrines of these horrible priests. We had Jewish Kohanim who were building shrines to Baal, like a really big non-Jewish Canaanite god, and to the sun and the moon and the constellations. So kings picking up on, yes, people are worshiping, and clearly who are these shrines built for? They're built for Jews. Jews were going to worship non-Jewish gods and the sun and the moon and the constellations. And according to the Book of Kings and our canon, destroying these was a good thing. We should not be bowing down to them. We should not be praying to them. Okay. So you might think, okay, the Torah is ambiguous and prophets, they're a mixed bag. They definitely think there is some kind of power. There's something going on, but maybe it doesn't really matter, and maybe we shouldn't care, and maybe it's all just, we should all just focus on God, right? That would make sense. We're going to go into the Talmud. We're going to go into the Gemara. We're going to scoot forward to approximately, let's say 500 CE. Times have changed. Before we go forward, you need to know the day of the week you were born. If you don't know the day of the week you were born, you can Google it. Day of the week, your birthday. And if you don't know, just do that now. I mean, you don't have to, but this is much more interesting if you know. Because spoiler alert, the rabbis, our ancient rabbis, had a lot of feelings on astrology and how it could affect your life. So I'll get people, and people see people looking down, so I assume you're checking out your birthday. Well, I see a lot of non-pictures of people's lives, I have to guess. How much time? Do we know the day of the week we were born? Thumbs up if you're ready. Okay, well, right, you're all just left behind. No child left behind. Okay. So the Talmud, we think, oh, this is, I mean, the Talmud, the Torah is the bedrock text of Judaism, naturally. The Talmud is really where we start to see Jewish law being processed. There are plenty of laws in the Torah, and many of our laws are based on laws in the Torah, but the way we live our lives is based on the Talmud, Gemara. And so it would stand to reason if you'd say, well, the Talmud's going to be logical, it's going to be laws, and that's what they're going to focus on. And you will have a big surprise come in if that's what you think. Who would like to read? This is fun stuff. Remember, the first day of the week is Sunday. So who wants to read about Rav Ashi? Okay, I'll do it, but it's much more fun if someone else does it. Didn't Rav Ashi say, according to the Talmud, I and Dimi Bar Kutza were both born on the first day of the week, that's Sunday. I became a king, head of a yeshiva, and he became the head of a gang of thieves. Rather, they're debating like what affects how your life turns out. He says, one born on a Sunday on the first day of the week is either completely for the best or completely for the worst. What is the reason for this? Because it's both light and darkness that were created on the first day of creation. So the Talmud says, if you were born on a Sunday, you're either going to be completely for the best or completely for the worst, because that's when God created light. So we separate light from darkness. Light, dark, those are extremes. So according to the Talmud, if you're born on a Sunday, you're either going to be completely for the best, completely good, or completely bad. Anyone born on a Sunday? Any Sunday birthdays? Okay, good. I mean, unless you're for the best, in which case that's a good thing. Second day of the week. Who's born on a Monday? Any Monday birthdays? See in the chat, there's a person. Oh, Imelda. I don't know. You can unmute. I mean, can I unmute you? I can't unmute her. Okay. Oh, Imelda, you were born on a Monday. Okay, well, then, good. Sorry. One born on the second day of a week on a Monday, sorry, will be a short-tempered person. Why? Because on that day of creation, the upper and lower waters were divided. According to the Talmud, they're saying, well, that's how we know you're gonna be a short-tempered person. Contentiousness, division. So if you're born on a Monday, be short-tempered. Who's born on a Tuesday? Tuesday birthdays? I don't have Tuesday birthdays. Who was born on the third day of the week will be rich and promiscuous. And they do mean that kind of promiscuous. What is the reason? Because on that day, the third day, vegetation was created. Vegetation, what's the connection? It grows abundantly, but it's also mixed together without boundaries between the grass and the plants. So if you're born on a third day of the week, the Tuesday, according to the Talmud, you'll be really rich because of all the richness of vegetation, but you'll also be pretty promiscuous because of all the plants mixing. So you're going to do a lot of mixing yourself, according to the Talmud, not according to me. I don't have feelings on this. I just report information. Any Wednesday birthdays? You want to be a Wednesday birthday. I've never met anyone with a Wednesday birthday in my life, I'm pretty sure. Wednesday birthdays. If you're born on the fourth day of the week, you'll be wise and enlightened. That's pretty nice. What is the reason for this? Because the heavenly lights were hung in the heavens on that day, and wisdom is like light. Ergo, you're going to be wise and enlightened. Get it? Pretty nice, right? Fifth day of the week, Thursday. Any Thursday birthdays? Will be a person who prefer a Thursday. Oh, ooh, see that? How does this happen? Okay, so Jason, Roberto, you'll be a person who performs acts of kindness. Well, why? It's because that day the fish and the fowl, birds were created. They don't get their food by doing things for other people. They are sustained by the kindness of God, and therefore you will, in this case, kind of take on the role of God. That's kind of nice, and do acts of kindness for other people. So Thursday birthdays, pretty nice. Friday birthdays, that's me. Friday. Me and Jennifer and probably other people. One was born on the sixth day of the week will be a seeker. Rab Nachman Bar Yitzhak says this means that they will be one who seeks out mitzvot, because on actually there we go. Friday is a great day. Love Friday birthdays, also gives me. You spend most of Friday getting ready for Shabbat, so you're going to be seeking out to do mitzvot, so you'll be a seeker. And it was Shabbat birthdays, anyone born on a Saturday? Yeah, oh, that's a mixed bag. No, don't take it personally. I should have had that as a caveat. Don't take anything personally, I say. We'll get to the planets. That's a big caveat because it's pretty rough. Born on Shabbat, you're going to die on Shabbat, according to the Talmud. According to the Talmud, because they desecrated the great day of Shabbat in order to be born. Rough. However, Rabba Bar Rav Shela said they'll be called a person of great sanctity because they were born on the sacred day of Shabbat. This is a very Talmudic thing. Here's something. What's the question? Well, it could be either really good or really bad, but they're both equally valid answers. So there you go. If you're born on Shabbat, you're going to die on Shabbat, but possibly because you desecrated the great day of Shabbat, just be born. But also maybe you're just gonna be super, super holy. You win some, you lose some, you know? Can't win them all. This is the Talmud. We're very practical people. We're very logical. Yes. And all of this stuff too. I love it so much. Any questions about any of this so far? Yes.
Is there a mention also about the time of day that you were born, or just what day you were born?
There, I don't have it in here because again, I have like 35 more minutes and I have to like, but they do, I want to say yes. This section in Shabbat 126, kind of like A, B, like those dapim around there, it's loaded with astrology. I would have to look and get back to you, but I can't imagine they would have left it alone. And I want to say I did see something like that in the Talmud actually. If not the Talmud, someone in the media. One of the media was, I'm sure, picked it up because they can't leave it well enough alone ever. Yeah. Now, if you have a star chart, if you're one of those people, you're going to want to get that out because or just if you happen to know under which planet or planets you were born. The Gemara, I paused the Gemara here. We're going to actually pick up literally right after this. That's a whole long section about what day of the week you're born and what does it matter. Clearly, it does matter to the rabbis. Again, clearly the rabbis think it matters what day of the week you're born. That's going to affect who you are. And I pause it here. We're going to pick up right after that. Just give you a second. If you know the planet you were born under, you need a star chart. You can also find that online. That's a little bit longer of a process involving the literal time of day and literal location you were born in. So I'm going to assume if you're the kind of person who had a star chart, you already know this information. Or look it up and then just find the recording of this and find out. So, planet you were born under, how could that possibly affect things? Tuesday sounds more fun than reality. All right, so the rabbis continue their discussion. Remember, this is a continuation, literally just continues on. Rabbi Hanina said to his students who heard all this, they heard the whole thing. The Monday means this, and the Tuesday is this, and you're born in Shabbat, you die in Shabbat. And he says, it's not the constellation of the day of the week that determines a person's nature. He says, it's ridiculous. The day of the week could affect who you are. That is so dumb. Obviously, he says it's the constellation of the hour. So he's not saying astrology is dumb. He's saying you're just doing the wrong kind of astrology. So one born under the influence of the sun, anyone born under the influence of the sun? Sun people, they will eat from their own resources and drink from their own resources, and their secrets will be exposed. Ooh. You win some, you lose some. If they steal, they will not succeed because they'll be like the sun that shines and is revealed to all. So on the one hand, you'll be very plentiful. On the other hand, you'll never be able to keep secret. And everyone's going to know your business all the time. Bummer. One born under the influence of Venus will be rich and promiscuous. So again, you're going to see similar threads from before, but in a slightly different way. What's the reason? Because fire was born during the hour of Venus. They will be subject to the fire of the evil inclination, which burns perpetually because you're always subject to all your kind of winds. So you'll be rich, positive, and promiscuous. A little less positive according to the rabbis and, probably society in general. One born under the influence of Mercury will be an enlightened expert because Mercury is the sun's scribe. So closest to the sun, getting all that knowledge, all that wisdom, enlightened expert. Mercury was not born under Mercury. It counts for how I grades in high school and college. One born under the influence of the moon will be a person who suffers pains, who builds and destroys and builds. They will be a person who eats not from their own resources and drinks not from their own resources, so you can't afford things yourself, and whose secrets are hidden. If they steal, they will succeed, as they are like the moon that constantly changes form, whose light is not its own, whose times exposed and at times hidden. So you see how they're doing it. Like, oh, like the moon doesn't make its own light, but it can also hide, there's the moon and secretive and I think it's really cool. One born on the influence of Saturn will be a person whose thoughts are for naught. Sorry. However, this is very Talmudic, and some say the complete opposite. Everything others think about them and plan to do for them is for naught. So Talmudic. Well, it could be this, or it could be the opposite. One or the other. One born under the influence of Jupiter, Tzedek, will be a just person. It's tzaddik. Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak, who we saw earlier, said, and just in this context means just in the performance of mitzvot. So not just not really a just person, but you'll like do mitzvot that perpetuate justice. One born under the influence of Mars will be one who spills blood. Ew, what kind of blood, you might ask? Glad you asked. Rav Ashi said, they will be either a bloodletter or a thief or a slaughterer of animals or a circumciser. Rabbi said, I was born under the influence of Mars and I don't perform any of the activities. That's hilarious. He's like, well, you say that, but I don't think that's true at all. And Rabbi said, my master also punishes and kills as a judge. Master. So Rabbi is saying, I think you're thinking a little too literally about this. Rabbi is saying, you need to be a little bit more flexible with what you're meaning of being a bloodletter. There's lots of ways to do it. And it's not necessarily a negative thing. Slaughter of animals, you gotta eat, circumciser, you gotta snip those little guys. So, not a negative thing. Thoughts about the planets that you're born under and their effect. So does it seem like Rabbinic Judaism believes that astrology has power and truth and an effect in your life? Interesting, because the prophets are, yes, Roberta.
How would you know under which planet you were born? Because how do we know?
Well, there's people chat in the chat. Because how I was born under. Yeah, if you do a star chart, like you can calculate like what in the location that you were in and the exact time. If you know the exact location and the exact hour you were born, then and the date, obviously, I mean, that I assume you know, then it can be calculated. You can't do it yourself, but you can use a computer. And you can go online and it'll say you were born under this planet, this planet. So and this will be, we'll post this, Jennifer will clip, or actually will clip this and it'll all be online. You can then go see what planets you're born under and what the Talmud has to say about that. Different zodiac signs have planets that are different, yes, they're ruling planet, thanks God. There are, and we're gonna actually go into the Hebrew zodiac eventually. Yes, there are different, so your different symbols, different zodiac signs will have different planets that are kind of like, this is what your ruling planet is. In addition, you're gonna be born under certain planets. So you can kind of read it either in both ways, I guess also. If you know the planet that is the ruling planet of your star sign. I do not. If anyone wants to talk about the ruling planet of Taurus is, will save me a lot of work. Just in case you're wondering, we are scooching for about 1,000 years because I had to go into the medievals to find this, but we have Nathaniel ben Isaiah, 14th century Yemenite rabbi, more of a poet than anything else really. And these are all the guys, all the planets and what they mean. So whichever one is yours. They're not all positive. Don't blame me, blame him. I didn't say that you're going to be unsuccessful. It's that guy. It wasn't me. So the Hebrew, the pronunciation, and the interpretation. In case you're curious. Oh, there's more chat. There's chat. Oh, cool. Okay, well, Taurus is Venus. So, now I want to scooch back and see what Venus is. I feel like it's not going to be positive. Just 9. Ooh, rich and promiscuous. Oh, it's a mix. I'll take it. Thanks, Carly. So, and they do have a discussion. This continues. This is the same piece of Talmud they're discussing. Okay, so we have all this information, all the constellations. The day of the week is what tells us what our lives are going to be like and who we are. Oh, the planet we're born under is going to affect us and how our lives go and who we're going to be. And then they have this big discussion. Rabbi Hanina says a constellation makes one wise and a constellation makes one wealthy, and there's a constellation for the Jewish people that influences them. So Rabbi Hanina is saying, yes, 100% astrology affects the Jewish people. Rabbi Yochanan says there is no constellation for the Jewish people that affects them. Jewish people are not subject to the influence of astrology. Not that it's not real, not that it doesn't affect people. It's simply that, according to Rabbi Yochanan, it doesn't affect us. Rav also holds that there is no constellation for the Jewish people. As he said, from where is it derived? There's no constellation for the Jewish people, as it is stated, and they bring in a story from Genesis. With regard to Abraham, God brought him outside and said, and famous, look towards the heaven, count the stars. If you can count them, that's going to be your offspring. God says that to Abraham. And the sages derive from this that Abraham said next that, and then now they're sort of, they're gonna have their own interpretation of this incident. Abraham said before the Holy Blessed One, ruler of the universe, behold, you've given me no offspring, and no one born to my house is to be my heir. That is from the Torah. And then the Holy Blessed One says, no. And behold, the word of God came to him saying, this person shall not be your heir, meaning that Israel is living in his house. Rather, one who will come forth from your own innards will be your heir. Okay, and we know that's true. We know that happens, but he didn't know. Neptune, oh yeah, so that's the thing. Sorry, rude pause. So the planets that they didn't know about, they didn't have any comments on because they literally didn't know those planets existed. So it doesn't work if your planet is a planet that was not known to those rabbis. Continuing the conversation, Abraham said before God, ruler of the universe. This is the rabbis inventing a story or deducing a story that they are saying happened in Genesis. It didn't happen in the book, in the Torah, but this is what they're filling the blanks. So say the rabbis that Abraham said to God, ruler of the universe, I looked at my astrological map, and according to the configuration of my constellations, I'm not fit to have a son. According to the rabbis, Abraham took his star chart and said, God, look at my star chart. It says I can't have a son. The Holy Blessed One, according to the rabbis, said to Abraham, emerge from your astrology, which is hilarious to think about happening. Just a really funny phrase. God brought him outside. That's what they're saying. That's our proof text. Sure. As there is no constellation for the people of Israel, what is your thinking? Is it because Jupiter is situated in the west, you can't have children? I will restore it and then reestablish it in the east. That's interesting. So according to the rabbis, the ancient rabbis, the Torah is acknowledging that there are astrological symbols and there is power in the heavens, there's power in the planets, power in the stars. It's simply that, according to ancient rabbis, God's power supersedes. God, if God is the God who created all these things, God can move them around. Continuing in the text, and that is the meaning of that which is written with regard to Abraham, who has raised one from the east, he will call justice Zodiac to their steps, levaraglo. The rabbis are going to use a little piece of rabbinic machinations, wordplay, to prove their point. So they take this line from the Torah, who has raised one up from the east, he will call Tzedek to their steps, levaraglo, and they say God gives nations before him, makes him rule over kings, their sword makes him as dust, their bow is a driven stubble. Ergo, God established Jupiter, Tzedek, in the east on behalf of levaraglo, Abraham. So they're saying clearly the text itself is telling us that God moved the planets around so that Abraham could have a son. Because it's true, according to Abraham's star chart, he wasn't gonna have a son. But then God moved the literal planet so that he could have a child, according to our ancient rabbis. So is it that they do not think that astrology is real or has power? No, they do think that. They just think that God is over everything. God, the heavens, us. Speaking of the heavens, they just opened up here in this one. Can be very distracting. Questions, thoughts, comments? And is this quiet? I feel like either people are asleep or dumbfounded. I just don't know which one it is.
I have one for you.
Thank you. Did
they have a clue that the earth was round and the planets rotated around the sun? I'm sorry.
No, it is a good question. We're gonna get to the guys who did know that. Because once you start talking about like medieval rabbis, like they knew Plato, they knew the Greeks, and they were living around Muslim and Arab astronomers who knew all of these things. So eventually they did, but not initially. Good question.
How does the Urim and Thummim, especially with this Parsha, fit in? Because I sure did believe in that.
Oh, like the on the breastplate.
Mhm.
Oh yeah. I do have a class on crystals, teaching high schoolers that. I don't know if I could do a whole hour on it. So yeah, I mean, that's crystal work, and that is somewhat Jewish. And yes, it's a thing, and it's a whole class, and maybe that'll be next time. I'll get back to you. Yes, it's a thing. If you're ever curious, what is your Hebrew zodiac? What is it? What does it line up with? That's them. It's pretty one-to-one. A betula, the interesting thing about that is Virgo, and a betula literally means a hymen, but it's kind of taken to mean virgin for, I think, obvious reasons. Mostly they're just straight translation. Sure. Sartan, Akrab was 9. So if you ever want to know what your zodiac symbol was, that's going to become relevant in a moment when I switch slide. Okay, so the rabbis, they talk about all this, you know, the planets make a difference, or the day of the week makes a difference, but there has been an argument made that the Gemara, the Talmud, is elitist, and it's rabbis talking to rabbis about rabbis. But what were the actual Jews doing? Like, who actually cares? Were they actually care? Oh, turns out they really did, and they actually put zodiacs in their synagogue floors. Beautiful zodiacs in their floors. This is from Tiberia, approximately 300 CE, approximately. And it's, I mean, you can see them. They kind of, you can tell what a lot of them are. There's the Tele, sure, there's an obvious one. That's the bull, Taurus. You can see you guys your symbols 9. Your scales are back there. Yeah, I think so. Here, some of them are missing. Sorry. So Jews, not only was it, oh, it's like, you know, like I didn't, I mean, I go to synagogue, but I really, you know, I still check my horoscope in the newspaper every day in the year 300. No, they put it in the floor of their synagogue, right there in Israel. Just saying. And here's another one. They're really into it. Like, really into it. This I really like. So you know how if you donate money to the synagogue, you donate enough money, we'll put your name on the wall. Yeah, that's not a new thing. Oh, these synagogues these days, they just want to ask me for money, and then they'll put my name on the wall. Oh, they're so annoying. Turns out, we've always done it. Here you see an inscription on the floor with it's in front of a huge mosaic of the zodiac, and it says, "May he be remembered for good, Yudan, son of Yitzchak the priest, and I had to translate that one, his daughter. Amen. That is, I don't know, maybe not the first, but certainly a very early, this zodiac was donated by this guy. So every time you see a plaque in a synagogue where someone donated money, just know it's an ancient Jewish tradition. To just touch on somewhat, I don't know what time it is, somewhat briefly. Our medievals. Now we are scooching quite forward in time, but also these are guys who were familiar with like astronomy, and who were familiar with like Arab Muslim astronomy, very advanced stuff. And they were familiar with the Greeks, and they were familiar, like they had a large basis of knowledge. They were not living in Jewish land among Jews. They were living they were a minority, as are half of us did anyway. So you have the Ramban, not Rambam, Ramban Nachmanides, who is commenting on this line from Deuteronomy. When you enter the land God's giving you, you should not learn to imitate the abhorrent practices of those nations, non-Jewish people. So what does the Ramban think about this? The Ramban, and of course astrology is kind of one of those practices. So the Ramban's kind of in this weird place with, so those practice, but also clearly we love it. The Ramban saying, God placed the earth and all things therein in the power of the stars and constellations, depending on their rotation and position, as proven by the study of astrology. Over the stars and constellations, God further appointed guides, angels, and lords, which are the soul of the stars and constellations. So according to the Ramban, astrology is very real because God's real. God created it. God created the system of astrology, according to the Ramban. So of course it's real. And of course it has power. And of course it can affect your life because God created it. Okay. Their behavior from the time they come into existence for duration, eternal duration, is according to the pattern of what the Most High decreed for them. However, it was one of God's mighty wonders that within the power of these higher forces, God put configurations and capacities to alter the behavior of those under them. Oh, so they have the ability to kind of change things and affect people's lives. Thus, if the direction of the stars towards the earth be good or bad to a certain country, people, or individual, the higher dominions can reverse it of their own volition. And they does a little bit of wordplay, saying another word for oneg, pleasure, is nega, plague, it's the opposite. And since they have the same letters, if you kind of just mix them around, it could change. Point is, the Ramban doesn't just say, oh, there's God who created astrology and astrology affects us. You think God created these, trying to think of what not really rude to Ramban to say. Lesser powers than God that control the stars and the sun, the moon, and the planets, and can switch things around and move them if we need them to. Which begs the question, how do you change the stars that might be misaligned against you, right? Because that's what you'd want to know. Continuing with the Ramban, God ordained it so because the Holy Blessed One, it's the same thing. Therefore, the author of the Book of the Moon, a medieval work of necromancy and astrology, just gonna lump those two together because they're so related. I don't think I'm ever gonna do a class on necromancy, Jennifer, just make sure that's not, I've taught all sorts of weird stuff, but I feel like we're going to draw the line in necromancy. And that's when I lose my job. Said, when the moon, or as we know it, the sphere of the world, is, for example, at the head of Aries, and the constellation thus appears in a certain form, we should make a drawing of that grouping, engraving it on the particular time when this position appears. And the name of the angel, one of the names that's mentioned in the book, is a very weird book, and I can't get through any of it. That I even find, pointed over, then perform a certain burning of incense in a certain specified manner, and the result of the influence of the relative position of the stars will be for evil, to root out and pull down, destroy, overthrow. So if you want to change some star signs to make the bad things happen, according to the Ramban, who's quoting a book of necromancy and astrology, this is how you do it, in case you need it. You might need that. And the rest of it's just kind of the same thing, in the interest of time. Thoughts about Ramban and his plans, approach. Now we're in the 13th century, so we're kind of medieval. We're not in the rabbis and the Talmud, and we're certainly not in Torah. So not only is there God and astrology, but there is God, and there are powers that control astrological symbols and powers, and then there's us. And if we want to change something that's happening, we can appeal to these intermediary powers. Wild. You have the Rashba, same time period-ish and same area of the world, again, living under Muslim influence and power. And he says, while one may not ask an astrologer for a prediction, astrology itself is real. One must ultimately trust in God and not any lesser force, as God can perform miracles to overcome the patterns of nature. One is forbidden to ask an astrologer for a prediction, but one may act on the words of astrologer if advice is freely given. Oh, Rashba. He's just trying to have his cake and eat it too. So astrology is real, but you can't consult an astrologer because where are you supposed to place your faith? According to the Rashba. In God.
In God.
Thank you. In God. It should be God. And why? He says why. Not a trick question. Once again, I'm thinking about how the science is developed, and this is early in the evolution. Clear lines are not necessarily defined yet. Oh, for sure, you can see how science is, kind of the natural. We're in the birthing process of science, but also like you got to give them credit in the 13th century. Like they had science. They had science for sure. And I think if you study kind of like when we did classes on like demons, I think you clearly make the argument that there is a spiritual aspect to how Judaism approaches demons, and there's clearly a medical aspect, like a physical science, medical So it's developing, and certainly by the 13th century in Spain, especially, I mean, they're not modern in their science or their astronomy, but they're getting there. It's interesting that Rashba really just trying to bring it back to God, saying God, we have to believe in God. We can't consult astrologers, and you can see why you would say, oh, astrology is real, and God is real, but you cannot talk to an astrologer. And I would say it's because he doesn't want you to start having an intermediary, a human being intermediary between you and the forces of the world. It needs to be you and God, because ultimately God can override anything God wants. So, and if you start consulting an astrologer, you might start to substitute your your soul, your religious self, your spirituality. You might start to substitute God and Judaism with astrology. And that would be not like, according to the Rashba and everyone who comes before him, really, that would be completely misunderstanding astrology, because astrology, according to all these guys who came before us, astrology is a subset of God. God controls this. God controls everything. And so if you start consulting astrologers, if you start using it, it'll just become a substitute and a poor one at that, which kind of harkens back to the prophets, I think. Now we're really just modern at this point. I think this is probably my last one. The Shulchan Aruch, people say, oh, we're not biblical Jews, we're rabbinic Jews. And that's true. We're not biblical Jews. We don't live our lives the way that they're described in the Torah. But we're not like Talmud Jews either. We're really Shulchan Aruch Jews. Like if you read the Shulchan Aruch, which is mid-16th century, written by Yosef Karo in Syria, and then the gloss, or the mapah, the tablecloth, the Shulchan Aruch, the tablecloth was Ashkenazi, which is shocking, the Ashkenazim covering up and stifling the Sephardim, shocking. But whenever you see gloss or Haggah, that's the Ashkenazi interjection into the Shulchan Aruch, which is Sephardi. And it's straight up law. There's no stories, there's no like, and that's what I said, straight up laws. And this is really how we live our lives now. And they debate. You have Karo, Sephardi. We do not make inquiries to astrological seers nor to the fates. The gloss, the Haggah, the Ashkenazi tablecloth to this table interjects, just so we know that there's a difference, because it said you must be wholehearted with Adonai, your God, and certainly it's prohibited to make inquiries to magicians, diviners, and sorcerers. So just in case you're wondering, it also falls into that category. We saw when we started this whole thing, you can't consult soothsayers. Basically, thousands of years later, you have Israelis saying that means you can't consult astrologers either. Okay. That seems straightforward, right? Literally right after that, we have the custom to not begin things on the second or fourth days of the week, so Monday or Wednesday, and we only take wives during the full moon, according to the Sephardim. And the Ashkenazim say, and therefore we have the custom as well to begin study in Rosh Chodesh, that's the new month, the new moon, because even though there's no divinatory benefit, it's not gonna, there's no spiritual benefit to this, it's a symbol. What a person knows to be inauspicious, they should not do, and they should not rely on miracles. However, one must not investigate this matter because one should be wholehearted. Okay, so they just said, and they agreed, Ashkenazi and Sephardi, oh, can't talk to, you couldn't make inquiries to astrological seers, you can't talk to these astrology experts because you must be wholehearted with God. And then literally in the same breath, the next sentence, they say, okay, but also like we don't begin things on the second or fourth days of the week because it's inauspicious, and we only take wives during the full moon. And we only start studying in Rosh Chodesh. But their reasoning is, to me, fascinating. They say, well, there's no divinatory benefit. It's not because we think astrology has any kind of power. It's simply because what you know to be inauspicious, you shouldn't do. Like, it doesn't have any power, but we just know it's bad. What a weird cognitive dissonance. We don't think there's anything there, but we feel like there's something there. And if you know that there is, and you should follow that feeling. But this last line is what gets me. However, one should not investigate this matter because one should be wholehearted. They're like, well, we definitely think there's something to astrology, but we can't think there's something to astrology. So we're going to act like we know there's something, but we're going to think that there isn't something to it. And we're just going to pretend like we don't know about it or care about it, but we really do care about it a lot. what a cognitive dissonance. I love it. It's so funny. I mean, I find it funny, but I'm a rabbi. Is it my last one? Yeah. So we have a few minutes for your thoughts on astrology and what it does for you, what it doesn't do for you. Or if you need me to go back to a slide specifically, because sometimes people copy stuff down. Thoughts, questions?
I just love knowing the dialogue has always been here, even in Judaism, or also in Judaism. And that the same conversations have gone on forever and forever.
Yeah, it's been, I can't imagine, I've never really taught anything that wasn't in sort of chronological order, that you start with the Torah, start with the earliest text and just try and like trace it through and just to see how that conversation changes, how it changes, I think, based on how they're being influenced by non-Jews around them and science as it develops around them and their exposure to that and how the dissonance of, we feel like there's something there, but we know we shouldn't believe that there's something there, but we really want to make them work. We're trying to force them together. And it's always been that way since the prophets. Which I find it reassuring personally, that this is just how the conversation's always gone. And so despite my very Litvaker roots, the Lithuanian me, which is very pragmatic, is like, oh, this stuff, these people are, but it would be ridiculous to not look at things like astrology and all the other kind of things that you talk about and say, like, this is a deeply Jewish and spiritual practice. And to deny that would just be to deny our history, because clearly, as you've seen over the past, 45, 50 minutes, it's always been there. And probably says something about human nature and just how we're built. So I like it. I find it reassuring. And there's a lot more. There's so much more to like Jewish astrology. I just try to kind of get it in an hour because I almost always go over. So thank you for coming. Thank you for listening to the recording, because I know everyone's waiting for the recording. And I'm happy to stay after and answer questions, or you can go, because I try to be respectful of your time. So
Thank you. Yishar koach. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm wondering, is it
Thank you.
possible? Oh, I'm sorry.
No,
Is it possible to get a copy of your transcript of this?
we have, well, I mean, like, there's gonna be a recording that we're just gonna post on YouTube
right.
with the other classes I teach. I mean, do you want the slides?
Yeah, please.
Oh, yeah. Why don't you email, did you register for the class yourself?
I did.
So you can email Jennifer or just your email address and whatnot, and I can just send it to you.
Okay, or maybe Lori, you can do that for me.
Or Lori. Somebody reach out to me
Yeah,
and
she's
I
my
will
buddy.
get you.
Can we get a copy of the recording of this session?
Yes, we'll post it. It'll probably be Monday by the time we get it posted.
No rush.
Yeah, but you'll look
Okay.
for it on our YouTube channel like everything else. And if you have any trouble finding it, just let me know.
Okay.
Yeah, I think either we have or we're gonna have to make like just a playlist of all the stuff you didn't learn in Hebrew school classes, so people can go, oh, I want to learn about demons. I want to learn about witchcraft. I want to learn. This is all I teach them. Now I have to do a crystals class. I'm doing it for the high schoolers.
I think that's pretty cool. But didn't Solomon, was it King Solomon who went to the, however you say that, to bring back Samuel to get some advice from him?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We had a whole class on kind of ghosts, and obviously you have to talk about the rules about consulting the dead. And I mean, unlike astrology, the Torah is extremely clear. Like, don't consult the dead. Don't consult the dead. Again, this is another case of not because they don't think you can. They know you can. They just don't want you to do it. And then you see in prophets, the witch of Endor. She's not a witch. She's just a woman. Not just a woman, but like the witch part, I think, is just very much so kind of society being like, women doing things and saying she's a witch. But yeah, she's like literally brings back the prophet Samuel to be like, you're a bad person, go away. Leave me alone, which is, I think, a very appropriate response for someone who bothers you when you're dead. Thanks for coming, Laurie. Okay. Yeah. My class on ghosts and spirits. I think I have one just on that. I don't know if I combined it with witchcraft. Maybe I did. We'll dump it all on the playlist. And you can learn about all the weird stuff that's very, very true. Yeah, sex work. That was the last one. Dream interpretation. That was a good one. The Talmud is very detailed. What do your dreams mean? Any dream you have, they could tell you. The question is, will it affect your life? Bigger discussion. Thanks for coming.